Dr. Kim Tae-ho pressed his face against the cold glass of the observation window. His hands shook as he stared at the impossible readings on his screen. The numbers made no sense. They could not be real. Yet there they were, glowing bright green. On the monitor, telling him something that should never happen had just happened. "Run the scan again," he whispered to his assistant, Dr. Lee Soo-jin. "I already ran it 5 times, doctor," she replied, her voice tight with fear and excitement. "The results are the same every time." Tae-ho walked across the laboratory floor. His footsteps echoed in the quiet space of the research station. Outside the windows, the planet Kepler 442b hung like a blue marble against the black of space. They had been orbiting this world for 3 years now, working on the most dangerous experiment in human history. The subject lay on the medical table in the center of the room. Park Min-soo had volunteered for the procedure 6 months ago. He was dying then, his body eaten away by a disease that no medicine could cure. The doctors on Earth had given him 3 weeks to live. That was 26 weeks ago. Min-soo should have been dead. His body had failed completely 2 days ago. The machines showed no heartbeat, no brain activity, no signs of life at all. Yet Min-soo was still here. Not just alive, but more alive than any human had ever been. "How do you feel, Min-soo?" Tae-ho asked softly. The man on the table opened his eyes. They glowed with a strange blue light that had not been there before. When he spoke, his voice seemed to come from everywhere at once. "I feel everything, doctor," Min-soo said. "I can feel the electrons spinning in the walls. I can hear the heartbeat of the planet below us. I can see the thoughts of every person on this station." Tae-ho felt a chill run down his spine. This was not what they had planned. The quantum consciousness transfer was supposed to move Min-soo's mind from his dying body to a healthy clone. Instead, something else had happened. Something impossible. Min-soo sat up on the table. His body looked the same as before, but Tae-ho could see through it in places. The man was becoming transparent, as if he was only half real. "The procedure worked differently than we expected," Tae-ho said carefully. "Your consciousness has adapted to exist without your physical body." "I know," Min-soo replied. "I can choose to be solid or not. Watch." He stood up and walked through the metal table as if it was not there. Then he became solid again and knocked on the table with his knuckles. The sound rang out clearly in the room. Dr. Lee Soo-jin stepped backward, her eyes wide with fear. "This is impossible," she whispered. "Humans cannot do this." "Humans could not do this," Min-soo corrected her. "But I am not exactly human anymore." "Am I?" Tae-ho felt his heart racing. 3 years of work had led to this moment. 3 years of secret experiments, hidden from the Galactic Council and the other species that ruled space. Humanity was still new to the galaxy, still seen as a young and reckless species by the older civilizations. "We need to contact Earth," Soo-jin said. "The government needs to know what has happened." "No," Tae-ho said quickly. "Not yet. We need to understand what Min-soo has become first." Over the next few hours, they ran test after test. Min-soo could move through solid objects at will. He could become invisible. He could exist in multiple places at the same time. Most frightening of all, he did not seem to age. The cellular decay that had been killing him had stopped completely. "I can see the quantum threads that connect all living things," Min-soo explained as he floated 3 feet above the floor. "Every consciousness in the galaxy is connected by these threads. I can follow them anywhere." "What do you mean?" Tae-ho asked. Min-soo's form flickered like a candle flame. "I can travel instantly to any place where conscious life exists. The Valorian homeworld, the crystal cities of Andromeda, even to places where beings like me exist. Beings like you?" Soo-jin asked, her voice barely a whisper. "I am not the first to break the rules of mortality, doctor. But I think I might be the first to do it without losing what makes me human." Before either scientist could ask what he meant, alarms began blaring throughout the station. "Emergency." Lights flashed red, and the automated voice of the station computer filled the air. "Incoming transmission from the Galactic Council. All personnel report to Communication Center immediately." Tae-ho and Soo-jin exchanged worried looks. The Galactic Council only sent direct transmissions in cases of extreme emergency. How could they know about the experiment already? They rushed to the communication center, Minsu following behind them like a ghost. The large screen at the front of the room crackled to life, showing the familiar chamber of the Galactic Council. Representatives from dozens of species filled the curved rows of seats, but it was not a council member who spoke. Instead, a figure stepped out of the shadows at the back of the chamber. It was tall and thin, wrapped in darkness that seemed to move and flow like liquid. When it spoke, the voice echoed across dimensions. "Humans of Research Station Kepler 442b, the figure said, and Tejo felt his blood turn to ice. He knew that voice from the old stories, the legends that every species in the galaxy shared. It was Thanatos, the Reaper, the entity that maintained the balance between life and death throughout the universe. "You have done something that was not meant to be done," Thanatos continued. "One of your kind has broken the fundamental law of existence. Mortality is not a curse to be overcome. It is the foundation upon which all reality rests." The Reaper's attention seemed to focus directly on Minsu, even though he should not be able to see through the communication link. "Park Minsu," Thanatos sighed, and Minsu stepped forward. "You exist in violation of cosmic law. Your consciousness has achieved a state that threatens the stability of the universe itself." Minsu faced the screen without fear. "I did not choose this, Great One. I was dying, and Dr. Kim offered me a chance to continue existing. I took it. Choice is not relevant," Thanatos replied. "What matters is that you have created a paradox. A consciousness that exists without the natural cycle of birth, growth, and death. Do you understand what you have done?" "I understand that I am alive when I should be dead," Minsu said. "I understand that I can perceive reality in ways that no human ever has before. But I do not understand why this threatens the universe." Thanatos was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke again, there was something different in his voice. Something that might have been curiosity. "For eons beyond counting, I have maintained the balance. I have ensured that all life follows the natural order. Birth leads to growth, growth leads to death, and death leads to new birth. This cycle is what keeps reality stable." The Reaper paused, and Tejo could feel the weight of ancient eyes studying them all. But now, faced with a consciousness that exists outside these rules while retaining its essential nature, I find myself uncertain. "I have come not to destroy you, Park Minsu, but to make a request." Minsu tilted his head, his glowing eyes fixed on the screen. "What request?" "I require counsel from one who has experienced both mortality and its transcendence." "You will come with me, and together we will determine what your existence means for the future of all life in the universe." The transmission ended, leaving the three humans alone in the communication center. Outside, the stars continued their eternal dance, unaware that the rules governing life and death were about to change forever. The space around Research Station Kepler 442b began to bend and twist. Dr. Kim Tejo watched through the observation window as reality itself seemed to fold in on itself. Stars that had been points of light in the distance suddenly appeared, close enough to touch. Then they pulled away again, stretching into long lines of silver fire. "What is happening out there?" Dr. Lee Soo-jin asked, her voice shaking. Before Tejo could answer, the air in the laboratory began to shimmer. A low humming sound filled the room, like the universe itself was singing. The metal walls of the station vibrated with the sound, and the lights flickered on and off. Park Min-soo stood perfectly still in the center of the room. His eyes were closed, but his transparent form was glowing brighter than before. "He's coming," Min-soo said quietly. "I can feel him moving through the dimensions. Who is coming?" Tejo asked, though he already knew the answer. "Thanatos," Min-soo replied. "The Reaper. He is not traveling through space the way ships do. He is stepping between realities to get here." The shimmer in the air grew stronger. Then, without warning, a figure stepped out of nowhere into the laboratory. Thanatos was taller than any human, his form wrapped in shadows that moved like living things. Where his face should have been, there was only darkness filled with distant stars, Teho felt. His legs go weak. He had seen images of the Reaper in the galactic databases, but seeing him in person was different. This was a being older than most civilizations, more powerful than entire fleets of starships, and he was standing in their small laboratory. "You should not exist," Thanatos said to Minsu. His voice came from everywhere at once, resonating through the walls and floor. "Yet here you are." Minsu opened his glowing blue eyes and looked directly at the Reaper. "I exist because Dr. Kim gave me a chance to continue living. I took that chance." "Living," Thanatos repeated the word slowly. "Is that what you call this? You are neither alive nor dead. You exist in a state that has no name." The Reaper moved closer to Minsu, and Teho noticed something strange. Thanatos was not moving to destroy or capture Minsu. He was studying him like a scientist examining a new discovery. "I have watched the universe for longer than your species has existed," Thanatos continued. "I have seen countless civilizations try to defeat death. They all failed or they succeeded and lost themselves in the process, but you are different." "How am I different?" Minsu asked. Thanatos circled around Minsu, his form shifting between solid matter and flowing shadow. The others who achieved immortality became something else entirely. They lost their original nature, their ability to grow and change. They became static, frozen in time. The Reaper paused in front of Minsu again. "But you remain essentially human, even as you exist beyond the normal rules of life and death. You have kept your memories, your personality, your capacity for new experiences. This should be impossible." Dr. Sujin found her voice. "Are you going to destroy him?" Thanatos turned his star-filled gaze toward her, and she stepped backward. "I came here prepared to end this violation of cosmic law. But now I find myself uncertain." "Uncertain about what?" Teho asked, surprising himself with his boldness. "About whether this is truly a violation," Thanatos replied. "Or whether it is something else entirely." The Reaper moved to the observation window and looked out at the twisted space around the station. "For eons I have maintained the balance between life and death. It is a simple rule that has kept the universe stable. All things that live must eventually die. All things that die make room for new life." He turned back to face Minsu. "But you have created a paradox. You have died, yet you continue to exist. You have transcended mortality, yet you remain connected to your mortal nature. This challenges everything I understand about the fundamental laws of existence." Minsu floated slightly off the ground, his form flickering between solid and transparent. "I did not mean to challenge anything. I just wanted to keep existing. Intent does not matter," Thanatos said. "What matters is the result. Your existence has already begun to affect the quantum threads that connect all conscious beings in the universe." "What do you mean?" Teho asked. Thanatos gestured, and the air in the laboratory filled with glowing lines of light. They stretched in all directions, connecting to points far beyond the station. "These are the threads of consciousness. They link every thinking being in the galaxy. Through them, thoughts and emotions can influence reality itself." The Reaper pointed to one particularly bright thread that led directly to Minsu. "Your transformation has strengthened these connections? Other beings across the galaxy are beginning to sense that something fundamental has changed." As if to prove his point, alarms began sounding throughout the station again. Teho rushed to the communication console and found dozens of incoming messages. Reports were flooding in from human colonies across space. People were experiencing strange dreams, visions of a figure who existed between life and death. "The effect is spreading," Thanatos observed. "Your existence is inspiring others of your species to seek the same transformation. Is that bad?" Sujin asked. "I do not know," Thanatos admitted, and there was something almost vulnerable in his ancient voice. "In all my eons of existence, I have never encountered a situation like this. The rules I have followed for so long may not apply." He turned to Minsu again. "This is why I have come. Not to destroy you, but to seek your counsel. Minsu looked surprised. My counsel? I am just a man who was dying and chose to live in a different way. You are the first consciousness to successfully transcend mortality while maintaining your essential nature, Thanatos corrected. You have experienced both sides of existence. You understand what it means to face death, and you understand what it means to exist beyond it. The Reaper moved closer to Minsu, his shadow-wrapped form towering over the floating human. I have spent eternity enforcing the rules of life and death, but I have never truly understood what it means to live or die. I have never experienced the fear of ending or the joy of continuing. So what do you want from me? Minsu asked. I want you to show me, Thanatos replied. Show me what it means to exist as you do. Help me understand whether your transformation is a threat to the universe or the beginning of its next evolution. Minsu was quiet for a long moment, then he nodded. I will help you, but I have conditions. The Reaper tilted his head. You dare to make demands of me? Not demands, Minsu said calmly. Requests. If I am to help you understand my existence, then you must understand the people who made it possible. He gestured toward Taeho and Sujin. Dr. Kim and Dr. Lee are part of this story. They should come with us. Impossible, Thanatos said. Where we must go, mortal beings cannot survive. Then make it possible, Minsu replied. You are the Reaper. You control the boundaries between life and death. Surely you can protect them temporarily. Thanatos considered this for a long moment. You ask me to bend the very rules I have sworn to uphold. I ask you to expand them, Minsu corrected. Just as my existence has expanded the definition of what it means to be human. The Reaper was silent for nearly a minute. Then slowly he nodded. Very well, but understand this, Park Minsu. Where we are going will test everything you believe about existence itself. You may learn that your transformation is not the gift. You think it is. And you may learn that the rules you have followed for so long are not as absolute as you believe. Minsu replied. Thanatos raised his hand, and the shadows around him began to expand. They flowed across the floor like dark water, reaching toward the three humans. Then let us begin this journey together. But know that once we step into the realm between life and death, nothing will ever be the same. The shadows engulfed them. And the laboratory disappeared. In its place, Taeho saw an infinite space filled with swirling galaxies and impossible geometries. He tried to scream, but found he had no voice in this place beyond reality. The real test was about to begin. Dr. Kim Taeho felt like he was falling through an endless dream. Colors that had no names swirled around him. Shapes that hurt to look at twisted and changed in impossible ways. He tried to breathe, but there was no air. He tried to scream, but there was no sound. Then, suddenly, he was standing on solid ground again. His lungs filled with sweet, cool air. Dr. Lee Soo-jin stood beside him, her eyes wide with wonder and fear. Park Min-soo floated nearby, his glowing form more solid than it had been before. Where are we? Taeho asked, his voice echoing strangely in the vast space around them. They stood in what looked like a great hall made of crystal and starlight. The walls stretched up so high that they disappeared into darkness. The floor beneath their feet was smooth as glass, but they could see galaxies spinning slowly inside it. In the distance, figures moved like shadows between pillars of frozen light. We are in the realm between, Thanatos said, his voice now coming from a single direction, instead of everywhere at once. This is the space that exists between life and death, between being and not being. The Reaper looked different here. His shadows seemed more solid, and his star-filled face was clearer. He was still terrifying, but there was something almost sad about him now. Few living beings have ever seen this place, Thanatos continued, and fewer still have survived the journey. Why did you bring us here? Soo-jin asked. Because this is where they gather, Thanatos replied. The others who have tried to break the rules of mortality. I want Min-soo to meet them, to understand what usually happens when beings attempt to transcend death. As they walked deeper into the crystal hall, the shadowy figures became clearer. Teho realized they were not shadows at all, but beings from different species across the galaxy. Some looked almost normal, while others were so strange that his mind struggled to understand what he was seeing. "Welcome to the Council of the Deathless," Thanatos announced. The first figure that approached them was tall and thin, made entirely of what looked like living crystal. When it spoke, its voice was like the sound of wind chimes in a gentle breeze. "I am Aravel of the Crystal Mines," the being said. "My people discovered how to upload our consciousness into quantum crystals millions of years ago. We thought we had achieved perfect immortality. What happened?" Minsu asked. The crystal being's light dimmed. "We became trapped in endless loops of our own memories. Without the ability to forget, we could not learn new things. Without the possibility of death, we lost the will to truly live. We exist, but we do not grow." Another figure stepped forward. This one was clearly mechanical, its body made of gleaming metal and glowing circuits. When it spoke, its voice was flat and emotionless. "I am Nexus 9 of the Machine Collective," it sighed. "We replaced our organic bodies with mechanical perfection. We eliminated disease, aging, and death itself." "That sounds wonderful," Teho said. "We thought so too," Nexus 9 replied. "But in gaining immortality, we lost our ability to feel. Joy, sorrow, love, anger, all of these became meaningless to us. We achieved eternal life but lost everything that made life worth living." More beings gathered around them, each telling their story of attempted transcendence. There was Void Singer, whose people had tried to become beings of pure energy but lost their individual identities in the process. There was Eco Prime, representing a species that had uploaded their minds to a vast computer network, only to discover they could never leave it again. Each story was different, but they all ended the same way. The beings had achieved some form of immortality, but they had paid a terrible price for it. They had lost something essential about themselves in the process. "Do you see the pattern?" Thanatos asked Minsu. "Every species that has tried to defeat death has succeeded, but they have ceased to be what they once were." Minsu listened to each story carefully. His glowing eyes showed deep thought and sadness for these beings who had gained so much and lost even more. "But I am different," Minsu said finally. "I can still feel everything I felt before. I can still learn and grow and change. I have not lost my humanity." "That is precisely why you puzzle me," Thanatos replied. "You have achieved what all of these beings sought, but you have not paid the same price." Aravel's crystalline form chimed softly. "How is this possible, human? What did you do differently?" Minsu thought for a moment before answering. "I think the difference is that I did not try to escape death. I was dying, and Dr. Kim offered me a chance to continue existing in a new way, but I never rejected or ran from my mortality. I accepted it, and then I transcended it." "Explain," Nexus 9 demanded. "All of you tried to avoid death because you feared it," Minsu said gently. "But I had already faced death. I had accepted that I was going to die. The consciousness transfer was not about avoiding death. It was about continuing to exist after accepting it." The Council of the Deathless grew very quiet. In the silence, Teho could hear the distant sound of galaxies turning in their endless dance. "You embraced your mortality before transcending it," Void Singer whispered, its energy form flickering. "We tried to reject mortality entirely." "That may be the key," Thanatos said thoughtfully. "True transcendence may require first accepting the very thing you seek to transcend." Suddenly, alarms began echoing through the crystal hall. The sound was harsh and urgent, cutting through the peaceful atmosphere like a knife. "What is that?" Sujin asked. Thanatos raised his hand, and images appeared in the air above them. They showed scenes from across the galaxy, human colonies, space stations, research facilities. In each image, crowds of people were gathering, demanding access to the consciousness transfer technology. "The ripple effect is accelerating," Thanatos said grimly. "News of Minsu's transformation has spread throughout human space. Your species is preparing to follow his path on a massive scale. The images changed, showing fleets of alien warships moving through space. Representatives from dozens of species were gathering in emergency sessions. Some were angry, some were frightened, and others seemed curious about what humanity was attempting. The galaxy is choosing sides, Aravel observed. Some species support humanity's right to evolve. Others see it as a threat that must be stopped. Wars are beginning, Nexus 9 added. The Zephyrian Empire has already declared that they will use force to prevent humanity from achieving widespread transcendence. Teho felt his heart sink. We never meant for this to happen. We just wanted to save Minsu's life. Intent does not matter when the consequences are this vast, Thanatos sighed. The question now is whether humanity can handle this transformation responsibly, or whether it will lead to the destruction of galactic civilization. He turned to Minsu. Your people are looking to you as an example. They see what you have become, and they want the same thing. But do they understand what it truly means? I do not know, Minsu admitted. I am still learning what it means myself. Then we must teach them, Thanatos said. But first, there is something else you must see. The Reaper gestured, and the crystal hall began to fade around them. If you are to guide your species through this transformation, you must understand not just transcendence, but the true nature of death itself. Where are we going now? Teho asked. To the Nexus of Endings, Thanatos replied. The place where all possible deaths throughout the universe converge. If Minsu is to serve as a bridge between mortality and immortality, he must fully understand both sides of existence. The crystal hall disappeared completely, and they found themselves falling through space and time again. But this time, Teho could sense something different in the cosmic winds around them. They were not just traveling to a new place, they were traveling to the heart of what it meant to end, and somehow, he knew that what they learned there would determine the fate of not just humanity, but all life in the galaxy. The journey through space and time felt different this time. Dr. Kim, Teho could see the threads of light that connected all living things, just as Park Minsu had described. They stretched across the universe like a vast web, pulsing with energy and information, but something was wrong with the web. The threads were shaking, vibrating with tension that grew stronger with each passing moment. Some threads were breaking completely, while others blazed so brightly they hurt to look at. The quantum connections are becoming unstable, Minsu observed, his glowing form flickering as they traveled. My transformation is affecting the entire network of consciousness. Thanatos moved beside them through the cosmic void, his star-filled face grave with concern. The damage is spreading faster than I anticipated. Your existence has created ripples that reach every corner of the galaxy. They emerged from the journey above a massive space station orbiting a red giant star. The station was enormous, larger than most planets, with docking bays that held ships from hundreds of different species. This was Harmony Station, the diplomatic center of the Galactic Council, but there was nothing harmonious about what they saw below. The station was surrounded by warships. Sleek human vessels faced off against the massive battle cruisers of the Zephyrian Empire. The crystalline ships of the Valorians hung in space like floating diamonds, while the biomechanical fleets of the hive minds pulsed with organic weapons. It has begun, Thanatos said sadly. The galaxy is tearing itself apart over what you represent. Through the viewing portals of the station, they could see heated debates raging in the council chambers. Species that had been allies for thousands of years were now shouting at each other across the circular room. Show me what they are saying, Minsu requested. Thanatos waved his hand, and suddenly they could hear the voices from the council chambers as clearly as if they were standing there. The humans have violated the most fundamental law of existence, declared Supreme Commander Raxvel of the Zephyrian Empire. His voice was deep and filled with anger. They have created an abomination that threatens the natural order. It must be destroyed before it spreads. The humans have the right to evolve as they choose, countered Ambassador Nirasal of the Pacifica Alliance. We cannot destroy them simply because they have achieved something we do not understand. Understanding is not the issue, spoke Ancient Kethmo of the Valorian Council. The issue is stability. The quantum threads that bind reality are already showing signs of stress. If more humans achieve this transformation, the fabric of space-time itself could collapse. Dr. Lee Soo-jin gripped Taeho's arm. "They want to destroy us," she whispered. "Not all of them," Taeho replied, watching as several species argued in favor of humanity's rights. "But enough of them to start a war." The debate continued for hours. Some species demanded that all human consciousness transfer research be stopped immediately. Others insisted that humanity should be allowed to continue their experiments under careful supervision. A few even expressed interest in learning the technique for themselves. "The galaxy is dividing into 3 factions," Thanatos observed. "Those who want to destroy your species, those who want to protect you, and those who want to join you." "What about those who want to control us?" Minsu asked. The Reaper nodded grimly. "That is the 4th faction, and perhaps the most dangerous. They see your transformation as a tool to be used, not a gift to be shared." As if to prove his point, new images appeared around them. These showed secret meetings in dark corners of space, where representatives from various species were making deals with human corporations and governments. "They are offering us protection in exchange for exclusive access to the consciousness transfer technology," Taeho realized. "Some humans are willing to make those deals. Fear makes people do foolish things," Thanatos said, "and greed makes them do worse." But the most disturbing images were those coming from human colonies themselves. On dozens of worlds, crowds were gathering outside research facilities, demanding immediate access to consciousness transfer procedures. Some were peaceful protests, but others had turned violent. On the colony world of New Seoul, desperate families were breaking into medical centers, trying to steal the equipment needed for the procedure. On Mars, riots had broken out when the colonial government announced that consciousness transfer would be limited to terminal patients only. "They do not understand what they are asking for," Minsu said, watching the chaos with sad eyes. "They see only the benefits, not the responsibilities that come with transcendence." "Your species has always been impatient," Thanatos observed. "It is one of your greatest strengths and your greatest weaknesses." The images shifted to show human space explorers pushing deeper into unknown regions of space, driven by their new understanding of consciousness and reality. Some were making contact with species that had never been discovered before. Others were finding ancient ruins that suggested civilizations far older than any in the current galactic community. "They are expanding faster than ever before," Soo-jin noted. "The transformation is not just changing individual humans, it is changing how humanity sees itself in the universe. That expansion is causing problems too," Thanatos warned. New images showed human explorers accidentally triggering ancient defense systems on dead worlds. Others showed first contact situations going badly wrong when transcended humans appeared to primitive species as gods or demons. "Every action creates consequences," Minsu said quietly. "I wanted to continue living, but I never imagined it would lead to galactic war." "The most significant changes always do," Thanatos replied. "The question is whether your species can learn to handle the power it has gained." Suddenly, the images around them changed again. This time they showed Dr. Jang Haiwon, the lead philosopher from Taeho's research team, standing before a gathering of the most brilliant minds in human space. "We are witnessing the next step in conscious evolution," she was saying to the assembled scientists, philosophers, and politicians. "Not just for humanity, but for all life in the universe. The resistance we face from other species is natural. They fear being left behind." "But what if they are right to fear us?" asked Dr. Chun Wei-ming, a colleague from the Beijing Institute. "What if we are becoming something that other species cannot coexist with?" "Then we must prove them wrong," Haiwon replied firmly. "We must show that transcendence leads to wisdom, not destruction. That evolution leads to cooperation, not conquest. How do we do that when half the galaxy wants to destroy us and the other half wants to use us?" asked another voice from the crowd. Haiwon was quiet for a moment. Then she looked directly into the camera, broadcasting her words across human space. We do it by taking responsibility for what we have become, by showing that power and wisdom can exist together, by proving that humans can evolve without losing their humanity. The transmission ended, leaving the four travelers floating in the cosmic void in silence. She understands, Minsu said finally. The philosopher understands what this is really about. Understanding and achieving are different things, Thanatos warned. Your species stands at a crossroads. The choices made in the coming days will determine whether humanity becomes a force for good in the universe, or whether it becomes something that must be stopped. The Reaper turned to face Minsu directly. This is why you must complete your education. You will likely become the template that other humans follow. If you understand both transcendence and mortality properly, you can guide your species toward wisdom. If you do not ... He did not need to finish the sentence. The images of galactic war spoke for themselves. Where do we go next? Minsu asked. To the hardest lesson of all, Thanatos replied. To the place where you will truly understand what you have gained and what you have given up. The cosmic void around them began to shift and change again, but this time the journey felt heavier, more significant. Teho could sense that they were approaching something fundamental, something that would change everything they thought they knew about life. Death and the space between them, the real test was still ahead. The nexus of endings was unlike anything Dr. Kim Teho had ever imagined. It was not a place so much as a moment, the moment between the last heartbeat and whatever came after. Here, in this space beyond time, every death that had ever occurred, or ever would occur, existed simultaneously. Do not try to understand what you see with your mortal mind, Thanatos warned as they materialized in the nexus. Let your consciousness flow with the experience. Teho found himself standing on what felt like solid ground, but when he looked down, he saw the swirling patterns of entire lifetimes passing beneath his feet. Dr. Li Sujin stood beside him, her face pale but determined. Park Minsu floated nearby, his transcendent form more solid here than it had been anywhere else. This is where all endings converge, Thanatos explained, his voice echoing through dimensions. If you are to guide your species toward responsible transcendence, you must first understand what mortality truly means. Before Minsu could respond, the space around them shifted. Suddenly, he was no longer floating above the nexus. He was experiencing it directly. The first death Minsu experienced was that of an ancient being called a crystalline elder. It had lived for 10,000 years, watching civilizations rise and fall like waves on a shore. As its life force finally faded, Minsu felt not sadness, but profound relief. I am tired, the elder whispered as its crystal form began to dim. I have seen enough beauty and enough sorrow to fill a dozen lifetimes. Now I can rest. Minsu felt the weight of those 10,000 years, the accumulated wisdom, the deep loneliness, the joy of discovery, and the burden of memory. When the elder finally passed, there was a sense of completion, like a song reaching its perfect final note, but the experience did not end there. Immediately, Minsu found himself witnessing the death of a young quantum dancer from the Spiral Galaxy. This being had lived only 30 years, but those years had been filled with such intense creativity and joy that they blazed like a small sun. I have painted with starlight and danced on the edge of black holes, the dancer laughed as its energy form began to fade. What more could anyone ask for? The contrast was startling. Where the elder had lived long and grown weary, the dancer had lived briefly but completely. Yet both deaths felt equally meaningful, equally right. Do you understand? Thanatos asked, his voice reaching Minsu across the dimensions of experience. They chose their time, Minsu realized. The elder could have continued existing, but chose to rest. The dancer could have lived more safely, but chose to burn bright. Mortality gives meaning to choice, Thanatos confirmed. When existence is finite, every moment becomes precious. The experiences continued. Minsu felt the terror of a void walker facing extinction in the cold dark between stars. He experienced the peaceful acceptance of a star shepherd whose consciousness merged with a dying sun. He lived through the regrets of a temporal scout who had traveled through time but never learned to appreciate the present moment. Each death was different, but they all shared something in common. They were complete. The beings had lived their lives fully, whatever the length, and their endings were part of their stories, not separate from them. Now you will experience something different, Thanatos said. This time, Minsu found himself witnessing beings who had achieved various forms of immortality. A machine consciousness that had existed for millions of years, but had not grown or changed in the last 100,000. An energy being that had transcended physical form but had forgotten what it meant to touch or be touched. A collective mind that had absorbed countless individuals, but had lost all sense of personal identity. These beings still existed, but they were not truly alive. They had gained eternal existence, but lost the capacity for meaningful experience. This is what I feared you would become, Thanatos admitted. Another consciousness trapped in endless existence without purpose or growth. But I am not trapped, Minsu said, his awareness returning to the nexus. I can still learn, still feel, still change. Yes, Thanatos agreed. And that is what makes you unprecedented. The Reaper gestured and new visions filled the space around them. These showed possible futures for humanity. In some, humans achieved transcendence but became cold and distant, losing their emotional connections to each other and to life itself. In others, the transformation drove them mad with power, leading them to try to reshape the universe according to their will, but there were other futures too. Ones where transcended humans served as bridges between mortal and immortal existence, where they used their expanded awareness to protect and guide younger species, where they maintained their humanity while exploring the deepest mysteries of existence. The choice is still before your species, Thanatos said. The path they take depends largely on the example you set. Minsu absorbed all of this, feeling the weight of responsibility settling on his consciousness. What must I do? First, you must complete your education, Thanatos replied. You must experience one more death, your own. But I cannot die, Minsu protested. That is the whole point of my transformation. You cannot die in the way mortals die, Thanatos corrected. But there are other kinds of death, the death of ignorance, the death of selfishness, the death of the old self that makes room for the new. The nexus around them began to shift again, and Minsu found himself reliving his original death, the moment when his diseased body finally failed in Dr. Kim's laboratory. But this time he experienced it not as an ending to be feared, but as a transformation to be embraced. He felt his old limitations falling away like shed skin. His fear of ending dissolved into acceptance of change. His desperate clinging to his original form melted into joy at his expanded existence. I died, he realized. I did die. But death was not an ending. It was a doorway. Now you understand, Thanatos said, and there was something like pride in his ancient voice. True transcendence is not the avoidance of death, but the transformation through it. Meanwhile, back in the material universe, events were moving rapidly. Tejo could see through the Nexus's temporal windows that the galactic situation was growing more desperate by the hour. Human colonies were declaring independence from the Galactic Council, claiming the right to evolve as they chose. Several alien species had formed a coalition dedicated to stopping human transcendence by any means necessary. Other species were secretly trying to steal the consciousness transfer technology for themselves, but most disturbing of all were the reports coming from Earth itself. The government had authorized mass consciousness transfer procedures, and millions of humans were lining up to undergo the transformation without proper preparation or understanding. They do not know what they are doing, Sujin said, watching the chaos unfold. They think transcendence is just another technology to be consumed. That is the danger, Thanatos agreed. Power without wisdom leads to destruction. Then we must return, Minsu said firmly. I must teach them what I have learned here. Are you ready for that responsibility? Thanatos asked. To guide an entire species through the most significant transformation in galactic history? Minsu looked around the nexus of endings one more time, feeling the weight of every death and every life he had experienced. I am ready to try, but I cannot do it alone. You will not be alone, Thanatos promised. But the choices your species makes must ultimately be their own. The nexus began to fade around them, and Tejo felt reality reasserting itself. But he knew that nothing would ever be the same. They had seen the deepest truths of existence, and now they had to return to a galaxy on the brink of war to share what they had learned. The hardest part of their journey was about to begin. The return to the material universe was like waking from a profound dream. Dr. Kim Tejo found himself back in his laboratory on Research Station Kepler 442b, but everything had changed. The walls hummed with new energy, and he could see faint lines of light connecting every conscious being in the station. Park Minsu materialized beside him, no longer flickering between solid and transparent. His form was stable now, radiating a calm confidence that had not been there before. Dr. Li Su-jin stood nearby, her eyes wide with the knowledge they had gained in the nexus of endings. Thanatos appeared last, his shadow-wrapped form somehow less frightening than before. The ancient Reaper looked around the laboratory with what might have been satisfaction. The education is complete, he announced. Now comes the true test. Outside the station, space itself seemed different. The quantum threads that connected all consciousness were visible now, forming a vast web that stretched across the galaxy. But the web was damaged, many threads broken or twisted by the chaos that had erupted during their absence. How long were we gone? Tejo asked. Time moves differently in the realm between life and death, Thanatos replied. In your universe, 3 days have passed. But in those 3 days, everything has changed. Emergency signals flooded the communication system. Reports came in from across human space. The mass consciousness transfer procedures on Earth had been a disaster. Without proper preparation, most subjects had either died during the procedure or emerged as confused, incomplete beings that were neither fully mortal nor truly transcendent. They tried to rush the process, Minsu said sadly, reading the reports. They thought transcendence was something that could be manufactured quickly. The other species have used this failure as justification for military action, Thanatos warned. The Zephyrian Empire is mobilizing its entire fleet? They plan to destroy Earth within the week. But there was other news too. Dr. Zhang Haiwan had gathered the best minds from across human space, forming what she called the Academy of Transcendence. They were working to understand the consciousness transfer process properly, refusing to allow further procedures until the science was perfected. At least some humans are learning wisdom, Su-jin observed. And not just humans, Thanatos added. He gestured, and new images appeared in the air. They showed representatives from several alien species arriving at the Academy, seeking to understand human transcendence rather than destroy it. The Pacifica Alliance has sent their best philosophers, Minsu noted, and the Valorian Council has dispatched their ancient scholars. Even some members of the Machine Collective are expressing interest, Tejo added, reading the diplomatic reports. They want to understand how we achieved transcendence without losing our essential nature. The galaxy is choosing sides more carefully now, Thanatos observed. Fear is giving way to curiosity in many quarters. But the immediate crisis remained. The Zephyrian war fleet was still approaching Earth, and billions of lives hung in the balance. I must go to them, Minsu decided. Both to the Zephyrians and to my own people. They need to understand what transcendence really means. That will be dangerous, Thanatos warned. The Zephyrians view you as an abomination. They may try to destroy you on sight. Then I will have to show them that transcendence leads to wisdom. Not destruction, Minsu replied. Together. They traveled instantly across space to the coordinates where the Zephyrian fleet was gathering. The sight was terrifying, thousands of massive warships arranged in perfect battle formation, their weapons charged and ready to reduce Earth to cosmic dust. Minsu appeared directly on the bridge of the flagship, materializing in front of Supreme. Commander Raxvel himself. The Zephyrian warriors immediately raised their weapons, but their shots passed harmlessly through Minsu's transcendent form. "I am Park Minsu," he announced calmly. "I am the human who broke the rules of mortality. I have come to speak with you. Destroy it." Raxvel commanded, but his weapons had no effect on Minsu's consciousness. "I cannot be destroyed by conventional means," Minsu explained. "But neither am I here to harm you. I come to offer understanding." "Understanding?" Raxvel's voice was filled with contempt. "You have violated the natural order of existence. You are an abomination that threatens the stability of the universe itself." "I thought the same thing," Minsu replied. "But I have learned something. In my journey with Thanatos, transcendence is not a violation of the natural order, it is part of its evolution." "Lies," Raxvel snarled. "Then let me show you truth," Minsu said. With Thanatos' help, Minsu opened a window into the nexus of endings, allowing the Zephyrian commander to experience just a fraction of what they had witnessed there. Raxvel saw the deaths of countless beings across time and space, felt the meaning that mortality gave to existence, and understood the difference between true transcendence and mere avoidance of death. When the vision ended, the proud warrior was silent for a long moment. "You have truly died and been reborn," he said finally. "This is not the cowardly escape from mortality that we believed it to be." "No," Minsu agreed. "It is the completion of mortality, not its rejection." While Minsu spoke with the Zephyrians, Thanatos was addressing the Galactic Council directly. His appearance in the chamber caused immediate silence. Even the most ancient beings present had never seen the Reaper participate in political discussions before. "I have witnessed something unprecedented," Thanatos announced to the assembled representatives. "A species that has achieved transcendence while maintaining its essential nature. This is not a violation of cosmic law, it is its evolution." "But the quantum instabilities," protested ancient Kethmo of the Valorians. "The damage to the threads of consciousness." "The instabilities are caused by fear and resistance," Thanatos replied. "When consciousness evolves naturally, with proper understanding and preparation, the quantum threads strengthen rather than break." To prove his point, the Reaper demonstrated the difference by showing the Council two versions of human transcendence. In one, beings rushed through the process without understanding, creating chaos and instability. In the other, they prepared properly, learning to appreciate mortality before transcending it, and their transformation strengthened the cosmic web. "I propose a new covenant," Thanatos continued. "Rules that will govern transcendence throughout the galaxy, ensuring that it leads to wisdom rather than destruction." The covenant that emerged from the Emergency Council session contained 4 key principles. First, transcendence must be earned through complete understanding of mortality. Beings could not skip the lessons that finite existence taught. Second, those who transcended must serve as guardians and guides for mortal beings, using their expanded awareness to protect and nurture younger consciousness. Third, transcendent beings must retain their capacity for growth and change. Immortality without evolution was just another form of death. Fourth, the choice to transcend must be made freely, without coercion or desperation. True transcendence could not be forced or rushed. Back on Earth, Dr. Zhang Hai-1 received these principles with relief and determination. The Academy of Transcendence would become the first institution dedicated to teaching beings how to prepare for consciousness evolution properly. "We will not repeat the mistakes of the rushed procedures," she announced to the gathered scientists and philosophers. "Transcendence is not a technology to be consumed. It is a graduation ceremony from mortality to something greater." Minsu returned to Earth to serve as the Academy's first instructor. Students came not just from humanity, but from species across the galaxy who sought to understand this new form of existence. The lessons were not easy. Students had to confront their deepest fears about death and ending. They had to learn to value their finite existence before they could transcend it. Many decided to remain mortal after truly understanding what mortality meant. "There is no shame in choosing to remain mortal," Minsu taught his first class. Mortality is not a punishment or a limitation. It is a sacred state of being that gives meaning to every moment. Dr. Kim Taeho's daughter, Kim Da-bin, was among those who chose to remain mortal after completing her studies at the academy. She found profound meaning in her finite existence, knowing that every day was precious because it could not last forever. "I will serve as a bridge between the mortal and transcendent communities," she told her father. "Someone needs to help both sides understand each other." As months passed, the galaxy began to stabilize around this new understanding. The war fleets returned to their homeworlds. Species that had been enemies found common ground in their curiosity about consciousness evolution. Even the machine collective began sending representatives to learn about transcendence that preserved essential nature rather than replacing it. Thanatos himself evolved in his role. No longer just the enforcer of mortality's rules, he became a guide who helped consciousness navigate the transition between different states of existence. He continued to serve as the Reaper for those who chose natural death, but he also became a teacher for those ready to transcend. The Council of the Deathless disbanded, its members finally understanding that their previous attempts at immortality had been incomplete. Some chose to complete their transcendence properly, while others decided to return to mortality, finding new appreciation for finite existence. Years later, Park Min-soo stood in the main hall of the Academy of Transcendence, looking out at a class that included beings from dozens of species. Some were preparing for transcendence, while others were there simply to understand mortality better. "Consciousness is the universe's way of understanding itself," he told them. "Whether you choose to remain mortal or to transcend, you are part of that eternal journey of discovery. Both paths are sacred. Both have their place in the cosmic order." In the back of the classroom, Thanatos listened approvingly. The Reaper had learned something precious from his time with the impossible human, that even the most fundamental rules could evolve when approached with wisdom and respect. The galaxy had not just survived humanity's transcendence, it had grown from it. And in that growth, everyone had found new understanding of what it truly meant to exist, whether for a moment or for eternity. The future stretched ahead, full of possibilities that neither mortal nor transcendent beings could imagine alone. But together they would discover wonders that would make even the Reaper himself marvel at the endless creativity of conscious existence. The story had no ending because consciousness itself was eternal. It only had new beginnings, each one more wonderful than the last.